Cheers. It's just water, because we're talking Prohibition in this week's Slam Synopsis. We start in the 19th century, where religious centuries sought to protect the sanctity of our morals, starting quarrels as we pay remembrance to the time of temperance from
alcohol.
American Temperance Society demanded piety because in the 1820s and 30s, the U.S. was more religious and scores sought to take down the scourge of drunkenness. Who would have thunk of this? Place your bets, it's Massachusetts. Let's go to Mass. It's 1838 and they banned sale of spirits. They don't want to hear it. You can only take your pick of the liquor in 15-gallon or larger quantities, so to get to these pronto, gotta go find your nearest Costco. Now that law saw a repeal 2 years later, but Maine's deal catered to the ATS when they fell on the wagon in 1846 because they too nixed alcohol. The year is 1900. End 01. End 02. End 03, you see, it was not a moment, it was a movement where Temperance Society saw improvement to prohibit alcohol. They played hardball. Actually, softball. Don't scoff all because women were rising and galvanizing as a strong voice against liver killers because they quivered at the thought of a family ruin. Thus emerged the Women's Christian Temperance Union, shutting out suds in Saskatoon, but let's not maroon them. The Anti-Saloon League, established back in 1893, don't take kindly to people of the drink. They think saloon culture is corrupt and ungodly, so they started broadly showing how they loathed urban growth. Factory owners could be donors to the cause. Prohibition would leave their workers in better conditions under the suspicion that liquor led to lax labor leading to accidents. What crap is this? Just don't drink on the job and you won't be robbed of productivity. Now, war has the proclivity to spur domestic activity, and the same can be said for World War I, aka the Great War. It was great for Prohibition because of nutrition. The parley was to use barley for bread instead of beer, add on the fear that Germans were worthless and their product and practice should be stopped, so white guys had no hops. And no hops. Random picture of a beagle? Time to get legal. If Prohibition made you upset, you were considered wet, and if you wanted to cut the supply, you were called
Bone dry.
But the dries were coming at an alarming rate, so we can just focus on the dates. December 18th, 1917 was when Congress leaned into the fight, passed a bill into the night to have states vote for ratification. It goes throughout our nation, and while it was given 7 years to pass, the states kicked ass, and in only 13 months, once Nebraska voted, they hit the quota for the 18th Amendment. It got ratified on 1/16/1919, but the official line states Jan 29 was when government folk turned to Frank Polk to certify the ratify. Basically, he made the permit legit, but I must submit, before we put it to bed, gotta talk about the Volstead Act. Named after Andrew, this man drew up the National Prohibition Act on October 28th, double 19s, which just provided for the enforcement of the divorcement from alcohol and defined the lines from the amendment. Prohibition went into full effect on January 17, 1920 at midnight. A lot had foresight in the daylight to buy liquid courage to put in storage until the clock struck 12 when liquor was banned from shelves, a moment notable for these potent potables. As they roared into the decade, everyone thought access would decay. Okay, but what does it say? The US cannot sell, make, or import the devil's juice, so you have an excuse to drink as long as you think about a way to not get caught. An easy thought, easily taught, not that hard. The act wasn't held in high regard. The IRS was first supposed to guard, but they gave power to... No, that's Augustus. That's who. The Justice Department took over that compartment of protection, but it was less national and more intramural in the rural, where they actually supported Prohibition, because few others did in the urban. Let's start learning why. Governors were not bothered to allocate aid to aid its enforcement. The Terps gave no endorsement to those twerps, as Maryland never enacted an enforcement code. NYC canceled their load in 1923. C, people would beg for bootleg liquor for higher prices, and for now, that's nice and easy. Speaking of easy... Exactly, speakeasies didn't easy their way in, they boomed, signaling Prohibition's doom as more than 30,000 secret pubs were hitting clubs that sold you the hooch, but you couldn't mooch. In order to break in, you needed the password, like...
Bacon. Okay. Viva la Resistance.
And they needed to use special slang to get in and out and sip some of that sweet stout, and before you pout, this guy had tons of clout. That civilian was more reptilian, as this snake made $60 million annually, all manually bootlegging liquor as his job, sir, but he's a classic mobster, or as he's better known, Mr. Al Capone. Side note, if you think you should be like this mitochondria, the dude got syphilis and gonorrhea. No joke, also had a stroke, but that was well after years of jail time for all his crime. You're welcome, parents. It wasn't all avoiding cop alarms. Others looked to farms where the grass is well greener. On the other side, their franchise went wide, increasing from 20 to 500 thanks to some deals that were stealthy, all on the corner of happy and wealthy. The Volstead Act said you could buy a pint every 10 nights of hard liquor for when you're truly sick or aching by prescription. Forget Gatsby, doctor's notes were the hottest fiction. Also, give extra benedictions because they still allowed sacramental wine, so the holy shrine got filled to the brim with rabbis and priests so they could skip to the holy feasts. What happened to the breweries? They found their own jewels, changing their product to be winning, like Yingling and Anheuser-Busch, to load up your tush when you eat their ice cream. Coors, instead of steam trains, remained to hit the lottery by cornering the market on foddery. Some made near beer, which was less than 0.5%, so the name beer is more of a rent. A lot of breweries meddled and peddled malt syrup. One just adds water and yeast to unleash the beast of homemade brews. Winemakers wooed scrape by with grapes. Why? They sold wine bricks, which were chunks of grape gunk, properly grape juice, and if you choose to make wine on your own table, whether or not you're able, they still enabled, but the law got disabled even though they had directions printed on the frickin' labels of what not to do. Real loopholes from OG trolls. So was Prohibition a success? Well, no. But kinda yes. Drinking decreased by 70%, but that then went away in the later years as more were willing volunteers to go against the system. Issues, they would list them as support for repeal grew, but according to MIT and Boston U, those stats were still at 30p lower than pre-pro during post-pro, so it showed slower drinks. But we can link to death. Bathtub gin and road good moonshine was tainted liquor from bootleggers that had industrial alcohol, not terrestrial, to the common bar. This was far more dangerous and cruel, meant for fuel and medicine, which couldn't save over 10,000 denizens from dying due to drinking. The file drank, so thank Dare for making you scared to not go where they drink industrial alcohol. By the time the Great Depression was messing with everyone's money, the lower class was like, this ain't funny, as bootleggers were too damn expensive and protesters were expressive, citing jail costs going up. So showing up was FDR as people's faith ran amok, so he beat Herbert Hoover, whose campaign, well, sucked. Anti-prohibition, FDR was firm. He won term 1 of 4, and Congress made sure to propose an early New Year's resolution as a solution to prohibition on December 5th, 1933. They repealed the 18th Amendment with the 21st and was the first and only to ever repeal another amendment many deemed the worst because they had a deep thirst.
I need it!
Of course, not all states were compliant. Kansas and Oklahoma were defined until 46, and Mississippi didn't nix until 66. Today, the country is predominantly wet, not just in Seattle, but this is El Prado during my ending vamp. Other communities are defined as damp, which means you can own but can't sell, or you go to alky hell. Lastly, a place like Wildwood Crest can't own or sell Svetco or Sky because, like my love life, they are
Bone dry.
The mission of Prohibition did go haywire and backfired, but hey, it inspired HBO to acquire Boardwalk Empire. And I'd be a liar to say I admire those who like to pound down a few rounds as they drown in compounds, which sounds awful, but it won't be unlawful, so pour malt syrup on your waffles. Screw my opinion, do the beer mile with a jog or just open a lager with your closest friends. Life is too short, it's all gonna end. Celebrate the 21st Amendment from the East Coast to the hills of Beverly. My advice to you all?
Start drinking heavily.
Responsibly, of course.
Thanks. I needed that.